Now, here's the problem that I have. Other than all those other problems I just stated, the biggest problem I have with this article, take a look at this image right here. You see this girl right here in the inset? If you're just listening to this, I have a picture of Megan Fox, and inside the picture there's another picture. And it's got her kid, she's wearing a dress, and she's got, it's a cute little kid. Hey, but that's not a girl, that's a boy. She's dressing her boy up like a girl. Long hair, and she's wearing a Frozen dress. But it's not a she, it's a he. They're all boys. She doesn't refer to her kids as transgender. She says, I got 3 boys, but this thing looks like a girl. You would totally confuse this kid as a girl. Now, this kid is going to school, and the other kids at school are making fun of him. And so he comes home and he says, listen, Mom, I don't want to wear a dress anymore, and I don't want long hair. And Megan Fox goes, no. Don't be embarrassed by those other kids. Don't be embarrassed by those racist, patriarchal, cis-white, Trump-voting, racist 8-year-olds out there. No, you continue to wear that dress and long hair to school. And the kid is openly telling her that he would rather not do that. But because raising your kid transgender in Hollywood is such a fad, she refuses to let the kid to make his own decisions, right?
And just for the record, for anyone that's going to listen to this, I actually spent hours trying to find any evidence of Megan Fox forcing her child to wear a dress, and I didn't find anything. It was a complete waste of fucking time. I'd like to read a little bit from USA Today. Megan Fox's son is already a little fashionista at only 6 years old. The mom of 3 stopped by the talk on Wednesday. This video is on YouTube from the talk if you want to see it. And said her eldest son Noir is into fashion and sometimes he likes to wear dresses. Fox said she sends him to a progressive school in California, but even there his fashion choices cause some commotion. He still has little boys going like, boys don't wear dresses or boys don't wear pink. She shared. The 33-year-old actress said Noir had stopped wearing dresses for a while but recently wore one to school. I'm trying to teach him to be confident no matter what anyone says, Fox said. She said that when he finally wore a dress again to school, she asked him how it went when he came back. It's safe to say that her lesson in confidence went well. Well, all boys laughed, and when I came in, but I don't care, I love dresses too much, said Noir, told her. Ah, a boy wanting to wear a dress. This is a real good example of child abuse. Absolutely the pinnacle of first world problems. Now, here's the problem with everything that's been said. I'm a toxic masculine male. I enjoy fighting people. I enjoy getting into fights. But the reality is I'm not going to necessarily force that on a biological son if I have a biological son. That person can decide who they want to be, and I can support them along the way. The reality is the salty cracker is claiming Megan Fox is forcing her son to do a certain behavior without having any evidence, when the odds are that's probably not the case. And if anybody is actually putting pressure to force his kid to behave a certain way, it's probably the salty cracker, because he has this underlying assumption that this kid is being forced to wear a dress when there's no evidence for that. And I don't know how you make something that is such a defamatory statement, a statement that is obviously child abuse if it's true, without feeling any shame or guilt to say something so fucking disgusting. The reason why this is an issue and why I think it's disgusting is because what he's claiming and what he's putting out there, it's false. It's a lie. He's lying to his audience. Maybe he's lying to himself. And the reality is that he's spreading misinformation about someone else's parenting when it's none of his fucking business.
Hey, you idiots out there, why aren't you questioning how many of these transgendered kids or gender-neutral kids there are in Hollywood, right? Have you seen Will Smith's kid? That dude's dressing around like a woman.
Jaden Smith is in the LGBT community. He's even admitted to dating another man who's a celebrity, which all could just be a stunt, a publicity stunt.
I just want to say Tyler, the Creator, is the best friend in the world, and I love him so fucking much. And I want to tell you guys something. I want to tell you, Tyler doesn't want to say, but Tyler's my motherfucking boyfriend, and he's been my motherfucking boyfriend my whole fucking life. Tyler, the Creator, is my fucking boyfriend.
Here's a tweet from Jaden Smith, aka Will Smith's son. If I want to wear a dress, then I will.
You've got Charlize Theron. She adopted a kid. And she adopted a black kid from Africa and is making that kid wear dresses. I mean, this is insane.
So, once again, the Salty Cracker doesn't really offer any evidence for his claims of Charlize Theron forcing her daughter to wear a dress. Now, here's something from the Daily Mail where Charlie ends up talking about this, or however the fuck you say her name. I can't say her name. Sharon, I don't know. Yes, I thought she was a boy, too. Charlie agrees briskly, until she looked at me when she was 3 years old and said, I am not a boy. So there you go. I have two beautiful daughters who, just like any parent, I want to protect and I want to see them thrive. They're born who they are, and exactly where in the world both of them get to find themselves as they grow up and who they want to be is not for me to decide. My job as a parent is to celebrate them and to love them and to make sure that they have everything they need in order to be what they want to be. And I will do everything in my power for my kids to have the right and to be protected within that. So once again, the Salty Cracker needs to actually provide the evidence for his claims. There are 3 correlations with homosexuality that I want to talk about before I get into this. One of which is nurture. People that are homosexual are more likely to be abused. One of which is nature. And this is that people that are born that are homosexual are more likely to have more testosterone in the womb. Women with longer ring fingers are more likely to have higher levels of testosterone in the womb, and they're more likely to be LGBT. And there's another nature correlation out of the 3 correlations, which is people that are transgender are more likely to have the same brain function as the opposite sex. So someone who's a man who's transgender is more likely to have their brain is more likely to function in a manner that's more similar to a woman's. Now, with all that being said, there's some evidence to suggest homosexuality is both nurture and nature. These are correlations, not causation, but the reality is I'm trying to drive home here is I think there is evidence to suggest that when it comes to these people that are homosexual, a part of it might be their nature for some of them. And some of them, I get it, it's not. And we can call those people out if the reason why they're identifying is because of some insecurity or because someone has convinced them to be something. But to claim that these parents are fucking forcing these kids to wear dresses, when the Salty Cracker has no evidence for these claims, if anything, it just looks more like the Salty Cracker is projecting how he wants kids to be raised. Because it sounds like to me, these parents are supporting their kids. If anything, all I was able to find were rumors and clickbaits that Will Smith didn't support Jaden Smith very much for him wearing a dress, and that very well could be the case. Although apparently he came around on it on some fucking rumor on the internet. And on the overall subject, this is what I like about capitalism, is it creates these different products and services, and people are fucking free to choose how they want to express themselves. And so long as it's legal, so long as it's decent, somebody's not running around fucking naked trying to hump somebody, I don't see what's wrong with it. Hell, even nudists, you can make a philosophical libertarian argument for nudists that they're not doing anything wrong. And just on the subject of it all, what I'm trying to say here is to anyone who watches the Salty Cracker, why should you get to play the authoritarian of how someone else should live their life? Why should we tell children they should or should not wear dresses? What gives us the right to micromanage how a child develops? The thing is when I was developing as a kid, my mom was very much so kind of the crazy feminist mother. I guess you could say in a sense she kind of discouraged me from doing a lot of masculine things. So to give you some really quick examples here, my mom would beat the fuck out of me if I used sexist language, such as the word pussy, even if I used it in a respectful manner. And she would use belittling language about men and patronizing language about them, very sexist language. Like she would call me a black dick, a fucking black dick loser, a lot of other terrible shit. When it came to the subject of, let's say, me being a bit of a toxic man or making jokes, banter, my mom could not handle certain jokes and she would act and get completely outraged if I made jokes. And in turn, I sort of reflected that. She didn't really allow me to actually enjoy my sense of humor. Instead, she taught me to be offended. And when it came to the subject, she was also kind of like a borderline helicopter parent. and she would not allow me to express my sexuality. I wasn't allowed to have girls as wallpapers or screensavers. Yet my mom had half-naked pictures of men around the house. In short, my mom was kind of a sexist bitch, and I think she was trying to prevent me from being a quote-unquote toxic masculine male. But by preventing me from being a toxic masculine male, she didn't allow me to actually develop and become a secure man as I got older. And it took me years to become comfortable with my gender and my sexuality. And for someone else who's LGBT, I wouldn't wish the same thing on them. And for someone who's straight, I wouldn't wish the same thing on them. When it comes down to the subject, my mom tried to force me to develop in a manner that sexually just did not feel comfortable, that was not accordance with my own nature. I would not want to take a gay person or someone who's just their nature, they're gay because of their own nature, whatever, and try to force them to be straight. There is scientific evidence to suggest that some aspects of homosexuality is nature. And if it is the case that some men or women will have the opposite brain function of their desired sex, their desired gender, then without a shadow of a doubt, there's going to be some people in society who are just naturally going to wear the opposite clothing of the opposite sex. And trying to force them to not do so is like trying to force them not to be who they naturally are as an individual. And I could not imagine that not being torture for somebody. I don't see this as much better than gay conversion therapy, and it's very similar. And even the International Rehabilitation Council for Torture Victims recognizes gay conversion therapy as torture. The reality is we need to call out woke parents or PC parents or whatever the fuck you want to call them, SJWs, who force their kids to wear, cross-dress or whatever. But the reality is there are also people out there that do support their children and their own choices, that are not forcing them, and they might even be a little bit uncomfortable with them wearing, the opposite clothing of the opposite sex, aka cross-dressing. But the reality is that's not child abuse. That's called being a supportive parent. And doing the opposite is child abuse. And the salty cracker is really just projecting how he wants to force children to dress and behave.
You've got a whole litany of all of these Hollywood fuckers forcing their male kids to dress in women's clothing. And when these kids get embarrassed by it, these parents shout the kids down. You just had another singer on Instagram who was crying about this. She's like, my kid loves painting his nails and wearing dresses, but the other racist children at school make fun of him. Yeah. Because it's weird. All right? These kids aren't transphobes. These kids are just pointing out that you guys dressing your sons in women's clothing is weird. And instead of you guys taking the brunt of the traumatic experiences that are going on, you're forcing your kids to deal with it.
I don't think the salty cracker realized what he's saying. In some parts of the world, if you like Star Wars, you'd be considered a dork, and that would be considered weird. There are plenty of things that are weird. I don't think that's a good justification for making fun of someone. Dating someone outside your race. You could be the only racial group in your school. If you're the only white person, black person, the only gay person, if you're the only person that's into a certain thing in your school, you could be weird, and that could be a justification for making fun of you. And if you're in a place of employment or education or a place with a collective goal that is not on your own free time, then I think you should have to conduct yourself professionally, and if not, face being expelled.
And here's how stupid Megan Fox is. She says, I thought it was illegal. She goes, here we are in 2019. I thought it was illegal for kids to make fun of other kids. Are you fucking insane? Are you this disconnected from the planet that you think making fun of people is illegal? These are the type of people who want to make hate speech laws. They want to make it illegal to make fun of these kids. You're going to start arresting the other 8-year-olds on the playground who are mocking your son? That doesn't make any sense. You're going to find the parents? That's probably what they'll probably end up doing.
A possibility of what Megan Fox may have been referring to is what the salty cracker said. Maybe it's that she wants a fine against the parents, or for kids to be arrested, or maybe what she was trying to say, because I wasn't able to find the original article, is that kids should be disciplined by the school, and there should be laws that schools should discipline children that harass other children or bully other kids. No different than how it's not really legal for a school to allow for racial bullying or for sexual bullying. No different than how there's workplace laws and against harassment of sorts. But with that being said, I'm just saying I'm not sure if that's what Megan Fox was saying. And it sounds like to me the Salty Cracker is kind of taking this to an extreme. It's hard for me to imagine an adult actually advocating for that, although there's a lot of crazy people out there. And there are a lot of crazy leftists.
If the kid wanted to wear the dress and went to school and got made fun of by all of these other kids and then said, but you know what? I still would rather wear the dress, then I would be all for the kid doing it. Knock yourself out, kid. Be you. But the kid doesn't want to do it. Right? The kid's telling everybody, they're making fun of me and I'd rather not be made fun of. I'd rather put a pair of pants on and not be made fun of. But this woke ass fucking mom out there won't allow it. And that's Hollywood for you. This gender neutral, trans kid, drag kid, crazy fucking wonkiness is a fad for these assholes. And these people, these parents, they won't bear the brunt of what's going on. No, they'll put it on their kid. So God help this kid. God help all of these Hollywood kids. Your parents are fucking retards, and you're all going to pay the price for it. But anyway, boys, there you have it. Megan Fox, a complete numbnuts, man, raising her kids to be vegan and raising her kids to be transgender, all of this stuff, all the kids are saying, I just want to wear pants and eat a hamburger, bitch! If the kid wanted to wear the dress and went to school and got made fun of by all of these other kids and then said, but you know what? I still would rather wear the dress, then I would be all for the kid doing it. If the kid wanted to wear the dress and went to school and got made fun of by all of these other kids and then said, but you know what? I still would rather wear the dress, then I would be all for the kid doing it.
The problem is with the Salty Cracker's assertion is that he doesn't really have proof for a lot of what he's asserting. Instead, he's taking what these parents are saying and he's actually strawmanning it. He's actually misrepresenting and exaggerating it for his own audience. And I mean, like, just imagine if the Salty Cracker was in these parents' shoes. Imagine if he had a kid who wanted to cross-dress. That kid goes to school. That kid gets made fun of. That kid comes home and tells the Salty Cracker that they got made fun of for cross-dressing. And what does the Salty Cracker say? Imagine if he says, you know what, kid? You should not make your decisions based off of what other people tell you to do. Imagine if he just encouraged that kid to be themselves, quote unquote, to be you, like he said. Imagine if he said that to his kid, and his kid decided to go wear cross-dress the next day. Imagine if someone in the media on YouTube was claiming that he was forcing or pressuring his kid to cross-dress, and that his kid didn't want to cross-dress. Like, that would be an extremely painful exaggeration and straw man. And the Salty Cracker needs to he needs to shut the fuck up, or he needs to get proof or some sort of evidence for his assertions. Because right now it's looking pretty fucking weak. And just for the record, I searched through, like I said before, on Google, on DuckDuckGo. I could not find the article that the Salty Cracker was using. I found similar ones. Maybe I found the same one. Maybe they just changed the title and they changed some of the layout a little bit, so I didn't recognize it as much. The idea of all these Hollywood parents trying to make their kids cross-dress, I think it's absolutely silly to assume that without any evidence. There's also the possibility these celebrities are just supporting their kids. There's also a possibility they're uncomfortable supporting their kids, but they're choosing to do it because they think it's a moral thing to do. Now, when it comes down to it all, with the other comment that he made about, like, vegans peeling over, he didn't give any burden of proof for that. He doesn't give burden of proof for jack shit for his assumptions. And if my kid said that they wanted to eat a fucking burger, I don't think just because they want to eat a burger makes it morally justified. And besides, there's Impossible Meat, there's Beyond Burger, there's alternatives. And more importantly, if my kid said they wanted to eat a cat or a dog, I don't think that means it's a good moral reason to do so. If I had a kid and if he wanted to kill and eat a human being, I don't think it's moral to do so. The whole point I'm trying to say here is just because something feels good, I don't think that means that it's an ethical or right decision to do or moral decision to do. If something feels good, I don't think that's inherently logical to do just because it feels good. I think we need to actually move away from just how we feel to actually think about what we're doing critically. So I'm not going to go over everything wrong with what the Salty Cracker said, but he's got more holes in his arguments than SpongeBob. And first off, I'm just going to go over what an argument is. An argument will have a statement, which will have reasons, aka premises, which will then have a conclusion in the end. And the conclusion is there to support the statement and the reasons and premises. So ultimately, I'm going to throw up on the screen the philosophical problems we're running into, and I'm just going to go over it. When the Salty Cracker said that Megan Fox is a super rich elite woman of power out there, I really wanted to bring up this idea first off. It's the fact that he's insulting her along with other fallacies. Now, he's not committing a judgment language fallacy, but he is using judgment language, and not all judgment language is a judgment language fallacy. So whether it's an ad hom, a fallacy, or just judgment language and insults, it's important to pick up on pejorative terms, slurs, or any words that show a low opinion and disrespect towards somebody, along with other fallacious reasoning, because this is a tactic to manipulate the audience or the person who's being talked to in a discussion, a debate, or a response video. So what is the fallacy that he committed? Well, the fallacy he committed was called poisoning the well. It is a type of informal fallacy where adverse information, aka irrelevant information or negative information, about a target is preemptively presented to an audience with the intention of discrediting or ridiculing something that the target person is about to say. So how does this work? When the Salty Cracker brings up the fact that Megan Fox is a super rich elite woman of power out there, and he's sure she has a bunch of nannies taking care of her kids, and her kids probably can't even tell the difference between mommy and nanny if they had to choose, or some shit like that. Maybe I'm not paraphrasing him perfectly, but the reality is whether all this is true or false, he's bringing it up with the intention to try and already discredit her before her opinion is even given. And this is where the fallacy sort of comes into play. Now, if we move on from there, when he started talking about vegans being unhealthy, he's either appealing to anecdotes, appealing to emotion, or appealing to nature. So an appeal to an anecdote, basically, I'll just make these all really short and simple. You as an individual and your experience is sometimes relevant to an argument, and sometimes it's not a philosophical mistake. Sometimes it's very important. However, to overemphasize your anecdotes can more or less be really fallacious. For example, if I had a friend who, let's say, liked to, race cars, and let's say he lived till he was 80 years old professionally, I can't necessarily say all people who race cars will live to be 80 years old, because that's just my anecdote, because of my friend. Appeal to emotion, how you feel can be relevant to an argument or not, and sometimes it can be fallacious. For example, if I said, well, I feel like I'm God. Just because I feel like I'm God, that doesn't make me God. But at the same time, your feelings are sometimes important to appeal to make an argument. Appeal to nature. What is natural isn't inherently always good or bad. Medicine is good, murder and rape is bad, but all of which are natural. So, more or less, when it comes down to what he's appealing to, like to say that vegans are about to peel over, it really is just false. And I gave a lot of information to prove that. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, he's probably appealing to one of those three. And if I had to take a guess by the way he was wording it, it's most likely an appeal to anecdote. But once again, that's how he's wording it. What he may have meant may have been an appeal to emotion on how he just felt, or he could have just been meaning that, eating meat's more natural. I don't know. But that's in his heart of hearts. I don't know that part. So the next thing is the conjunction fallacy. This comes up when he was talking about Megan Fox wanting to, let's say, feed her kids a plant-based diet, but she also believes that plants are sentient. For example, he understood the reasons nicely. He understood the reason that she didn't want animals to be eaten because they have thoughts and feelings. But at the same time, she also believed that plants had thoughts and feelings. And the fact that he thought it was completely inconsistent shows that he actually came to the wrong conclusion. The conjunction fallacy is a formal fallacy that occurs when it is assumed that a specific condition are more probable than a single general one. So in other words, basically the problem that he's running into here is that he's assuming that our worldview is a complete contradiction when that wasn't quite proven. So when it comes down to it all, to make it easier to understand the conjunction fallacy, it's when you add something on extra when it just doesn't make sense based off an assumption for your conclusion. So basically, here's Megan Fox's conclusion, that we need to try and avoid harming plants and animals based off our values, or based off her values and her family values. Whereas the Salty Cracker's interpretation is Megan Fox's family values need to avoid harming plants and animals, and is inconsistent. The conjunction is the fact that Megan Fox is inconsistent. That's not necessarily the case. So, what is a straw man argument? A straw man argument can be defined in many different ways. It can be defined through an exaggeration and a misrepresentation of someone's argument, or it can be defined as replacing someone's argument
with a false argument or a fake argument and attacking the fake argument rather than addressing the real argument. The idea of it is that you're weakening someone's argument and misrepresenting it and making it easier to attack. Is there a possibility the salty cracker is correct about how the parents are forcing their kids to cross-dress? Sure, but it would be right for the wrong reasons. And this is my problem, is that if it's okay for him to attack these parents for potentially, forcing their kids to cross-dress or pressuring them to, unfortunately, the reality is if that becomes normalized, then anybody who actually supports their kids will be attacked and accused of child abuse when there's no clear evidence of that actually happening. So, appeal to extremes. So, when he was bringing up Megan Fox actually wanting to make, hate speech laws, how she thought it was illegal for kids to make fun of one another, she may have just been referring to, code of conducts in school. No different how we have code of conducts at work. Your boss can't legally call you a bunch of racial slurs and put you down and harass you sexually or whatever all the time. There are legal limits on what your boss can do in a professional place of work. Just like how we have workplace harassment laws, there's argument for school and educational harassment laws. And that's what she may have been referring to. So when he brought up the idea of her bringing up hate speech laws or finding the parents or putting kids in jail, I think all of which is an appeal to an extreme. And obviously when he said put a kids in jail, he realized that was a bit extreme. But even finding the parents is a bit extreme. She could have been referring to a lot of different things. So to jump to that conclusion without actually bringing up what else she may have meant, in my opinion, is a bit extreme. Here's an example of an appeal to extreme. Don't forget God's commandment, thou shalt not kill. By using mouthwash, you are killing 99% of germs that cause bad breath. Prepare for hell. I mean, it's comedic and it's ridiculous. And throughout this entire video, there was a ton of times where the burden of proof was on the salty cracker and Christopher Hitchens' razor, that of which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So, for everything that has been said here, the reason why I go through these arguments like this is not to nag people. It's not to make people feel stupid. I misuse fallacies all the time. Do I sometimes properly use them? Yes. But it's actually help educate people. And in turn, I'll make mistakes and I will be educated along the way. And I think people need to critically think more so they're not easily manipulated in society.
And on the subject of everything that has been said here, I think a good thing for all parties to do, and maybe the parents and kids have already done this, but especially for the salty cracker, is to toughen the fuck up. The salty cracker is making a big deal out of fucking nothing. A kid wanted to wear a fucking dress. Kids want to wear fucking dresses in Hollywood. The thing is you don't always notice every kid that doesn't cross-dress in Hollywood, because no reporter's gonna fucking report on that. That's not gonna get fucking clicks and views. But some kid cross-dressing, the fact that people get upset, the fact that people actually speculate that these parents are forcing them to cross-dress, the fact that people have these conspiracy theories, it draws in audience, so therefore it becomes more amplified and more noticeable. Basically, media inflates it because it gets some clicks and views. And the point of why I'm saying for people to toughen the fuck up is because if kids cross-dress and if they go to school, and if other kids make fun of them, you have to understand your gender, your sexual expression, it exists within the realms of philosophy, psychology, and biology. A part of it is nurture, a part of it is nature, and no one knows to what extent. A part of it is your ideas, and a part of it is your biology. And the reality is if someone doesn't like what you're doing, you should express to them why they're wrong, or why you disagree with them, or why in some ways you're masculine and in some ways you're not masculine if you cross-dress. Or you can explain to the person who's making fun of you that you understand their perspective, but you just don't agree with it. We should teach kids to actually have a mature approach so they can grow into mature adults. We should teach kids not to get triggered so they can actually handle the blunt, harsh realities of what people think to their face. And if the parents are pushing for kids to not be able to actually criticize their kids in school, then all they're doing is forcing other kids to not genuinely say what they genuinely think, and in turn not have to actually deal with the harsh realities of what these kids think. And to an extent, maybe that's good in some ways, and maybe that's reasonable. That's why we have workplace harassment laws. But in some ways, it's not, and it shelters these kids and it bubbles them from the harsh reality that they'll have to deal with, the harsh reality of what other people think. And when these kids learn how to deal with the harsh reality of what other people think, not only will they have control of their own lives, but then words will have no control over them. Like the saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It's not factually true. It's factually false, but it's metaphorically true. It gives them benefit because it gives them the ability to try their best to make words have as little control over them as humanly possible. And I think we need to encourage kids to become the next generation of mature adults. So to all parties involved, people need to stop getting fucking triggered all the time and to toughen the fuck up. And the thing is even if these parents are triggered, it's their fucking kids. They have a good fucking reason to be triggered. The salty cracker, this isn't his fucking kids. This is his fucking family. He needs to shut the fuck up and provide assertions for his fucking assumptions, and for his fucking straw man argument to become a decent argument, he needs to provide fucking facts, or he needs to shut the fuck up. When it comes to cross-dressers that are being forced to cross-dress because of their family, society and everyone needs to condemn them as much as possible. But I could just as easily imagine a child not wanting to cross-dress because people like the salty cracker in the mainstream media and online media, social media, are creating accusations against their parents that their parents are trying to either pressure them or force them to cross-dress. And because of the added pressure, I could imagine some kids probably don't want to cross-dress just so their family can be left alone. And I find that sad. So with that being said, have an amazing 24 hours.
So